I feel like I have the main characters of the AI ecosystem.
People are very creative. It's a social network. So social networks are about people and relationships.
Even if you change the ratio of creator to consumer by 1%, like that is a massive impact on the world.
Celebrities and rights holders are going through like a very fast evolution of understanding this technology and like how to use it.
Shaq is posting bangers, by the way. I think the first scientific breakthrough that comes as a result of simulating some phenomenon in video models would be an insane milestone, right?
You have a prediction of when that might be?
I would be shocked if we are not making breakthroughs like this by...
Sora has taken the world by storm this past month. It's #1 in the App Store, has spawned endless hilarious videos, and I had the privilege today of speaking with Bill, Rohan, and Thomas, 3 of the main folks at Sora behind this magic at OpenAI. It was just a really fun conversation. I got to ask them everything that I've been thinking about that Sora spawned. We talked about their reactions to Ben Thompson's take on Sora, as well as kind of the key product decisions that factored into how they thought about making it into a social experience. We talked about the state of video models, how they progressed over the past years, and what's next, future milestones, including novel physics discoveries and their predictions for timelines on those. We also hit on how video models in general will fit into the broader OpenAI ecosystem, including ChatGPT over time. Just a ton of fun to get to talk with these 3 brilliant folks about all these things in the video ecosystem. I think folks will really enjoy it. Without further ado, here's the Sora team. Guys, I'm so excited to do this. Thank you so much for coming in here.
Thanks for having us.
I feel like I have the main characters of the AI ecosystem. Which is like, as a podcast host, a fun thing to get. So thank you guys. I feel like a bunch of different things we'll want to hit on today. Maybe to start, I feel like there's been all these, stories told of the ChatGPT launch and how it was kind of not expected to be anything big and out of nowhere turned into this just, massively used consumer product. I'm curious whether like the same was true of Sora. Or I guess like, did you guys kind of expect this reaction? Any kind of fun stories from that first day?
I mean, I didn't expect to be #1 in the App Store for like a month, but it's one of those things you look at in retrospect. Like the research team absolutely cooked. We have a knack at OpenAI of creating these viral moments really well, and so happy to have done it. But I think it surpassed my expectations.
I think Bill also has a hopeless optimism about him.
Yeah,
it's not hopeless actually.
Not hopeless.
I think it was like there was a meme I saw at the first. It was a couple days after launch where it was like #3 in the App Store, and then Bill was like demanding #1. I think Sam was putting you in the cage or something. It's like until you were #1.
That's still my most like Gen. Nice. Yeah, 2.5K.
And
willed it to life.
You know what? I've worked a lot of different social media products. Instagram.
You're obviously Instagram for a while.
Yeah, and some successful, some failures within that ecosystem. So I tend to be very grounded and realistic and all this sort of stuff. But I have to say, like, that optimism is actually very important. We ended up being #1 on the App Store, which was wildly crazy for my expectations. But it's delightful to see.
So I imagine there's an aspect of this where you kind of have to reserve some sort of GPU capacity, right, based on what you expect. And so I always wonder, like, how in the world do you figure that out?
It's not really a science. It's a lot of, I think everyone feels compute constrained across the entire industry, not just within OpenAI. And certainly when we launch an entirely new product surface, right, that is as compute intensive as video, it requires some pain elsewhere in the company. I think one thing that's really nice about OpenAI, and like to Sam's credit, like everyone kind of feels invested in everybody's success across the board, right? Certainly when ChatGPT, releases like amazing new visual generation features, we want to make sure those are great and like people are having an awesome experience in chat. And likewise, the company really feels invested in Sora's success. People see that, we need to take these new bets, and it's important for the company's longevity, not just to have a super successful LM facing consumer product, but also the winning one in video. And everyone's willing to chip in, do your part in wartime.
When did the idea to like create Sora as an independent app, come about? Was that always obvious from the beginning?
It wasn't always obvious. I think there was a clear vision, and there has been like, a great level of ambition in terms of what this technology can be and how it can transform UGC and media generally. And so then if you pair that with what we were actually experiencing with the model, with like, hey, there's something very special in multiplayer mode. We're seeing this emergent behavior even before Sora 2 in terms of like, what is AI enabling? People can participate in trends extremely quickly and create these trends extremely quickly. Like we've seen that with other video generation software in terms of like, this is flooding social media more and more. And then with image gen, when we launched image gen, it's amazing. It blew up in ChatGPT, but people were just putting themselves in these amazing scenes. And so something about seeing yourself, casting yourself in these videos. And we just wanted to take that one step further. Like, do it with your friends, and we felt magic internally. And I think once we felt that, it was a very easy decision. The one thing to add also is it's not like inconceivable that maybe the surfaces come closer together, but ChatGPT does feel very single player, and that's sacred in a way right now. Like it can feel a little jarring if you don't know when you do something in ChatGPT, is this public or not? So we're sensitive to that as well. Yeah.
There's a long journey of this year for me at least, was like just trying to like think about what social means in this kind of bigger context. And we had lots of wacky prototypes along the way. I'm very delighted in it up in Sora, but it was not clear to me. Like product journey is always extremely snaky.
What was the strangest thing you threw out?
I mean, we had a prototype of just a pure social media stream inside of ChatGPT, and we're trying it out internally. One of the things we saw, I was just like, it was like, think about social. Okay, the first thing that comes to mind, well, we have ChatGPT. Why don't we just put some social features in it, see what it looks like? And when we started using it, we used it internally. It happened to be right before the image gen launch. And what we were seeing, we had these like, it was like kind of like threaded sort of Reddit style. And we would see these very long chains where what would happen is like somebody would put up an image and then somebody would be like, okay, it's smoking a cigar now. Like as I say, it's a duck. It's a duck with a cigar. Now it's upside down. Now it's red. And you're like, it was really cool to see it evolve. And it was like these little meme chains. And that seemed like something very special. And I'm thinking about more sort of what Rohan was saying is like, that's actually something you can't really do without generative AI because it's too hard to create. It's too hard to remix, to riff on something. And so that was like the wackiest, I think, one that we had. And again, through this long, snaky product journey, the Sora models were getting pretty good. We always wanted to do something really ambitious with them to really mass deploy them. And fortunately, it just kind of like fit like a glove in terms of, image gen is very cool, but videos are even cooler in some ways, especially in this context.
And it sounds like from the image work, you kind of knew cameos would be this like killer feature for these powerful models.
I don't know if we knew.
Not really, no.
But,
interesting.
It's just, it's one of those things in retrospect. Yeah, it's obvious, but I think this idea was in the ether, from when the research team was actually building the model. It wasn't until we actually like had it, like one of our engineers on the team, Bobo, was like, everyone send me a video of you saying, hey, Sora, it's Thomas or Phil. Or, hey, Sora, bring me to life. We like in a Slack thread, literally, he uploaded all these in the back end, then you could just tag the person. We had like talked about this idea. Yeah. And then finally, like everything changed that day. I think like we all just started cameoing each other. We didn't have a verb for this at the time. We just started tagging each other. And like it happened before we even noticed. It wasn't like, boom, this is it. Just like in a couple days, I feel like we were like, our feed is just cameos. Like what's going on? And we were all using the app a little
We actually had a moment where we were like, is this bad? Like, wait a second. Like, did we just like we had interesting stuff before? Like, but now it's just people. Like, and it's like, wait a second. No, that's actually amazing. Like, that's what we need.
Yeah.
One of the coolest parts of building these products is you release it day one, and I'm sure people start immediately using it in like a million different ways that you never intended. Like, so what's been like the most surprising way you've seen people use or capabilities that you didn't know actually existed?
Some people were like putting themselves in motivational situations, like envisioning themselves in situations they wanted to be in.
Anytime I see a style transform, it's maybe too small of a word for this, but like, you take a person. There's one review that I couldn't believe this would work, and ended up being one of the most remixed videos where I just had a kid opening a package for Christmas, and it's like, it's a Bill Peebles action figure, and it looks like a Bill Peebles.
This is what's keeping me on the leaderboard. This is one video. I'm like 25th or something.
Bill Peebles action figure.
Because it's Thomas's gen.
It's remarkable that the model understands that and understands the context of just like from a couple of numbers can put you in a completely unusual scene. I was amazed that emerged from the model. I see those type of things in my feed all the time. Not exactly the same, but it's always some riff on that's very cool. And yeah, anything that's massive transform. The claymation ones I love. Yeah. The video game ones, I think it's a little underexplored right now where you have like a LucasArts adventure, but it's actually Rohan or Bill or something. Those things, I just eat that up. There's an immediate see what the secret emoji is on those ones.
Some people are just getting insane, like the Kaigu Matsumara gens, like things we didn't even get close to that level of like stylistic output. So just seeing the creativity of the world.
Yeah. I think after we launched Storyboard, which lets you generate up to 25 seconds of video, that's when like the quality bar for me like really spiked. Like I'm actually surprised how in like one shot out of this model, you can just get unbelievably like cohesive stories. Like this is something that you cannot even get with like 100 attempts on like Sora 1. This is like really a new thing in Sora 2. It just really is reflective of the step function increase in intelligence.
On TVPN, I think you shared that like 70% of Sora users are creators, which is mind-boggling. I'm sure it's still super high. One thing I thought was interesting around the discourse around Sora is when it was initially released, I think Ben Thompson wrote this piece and he was like, I'm skeptical of Sora. Most people don't want to create, they want to consume. That's been the behavior of every other product. And then I think he issued a mea culpa and he was like, okay, I was wrong. This is a cool product. Curious what your reaction was to that and you think this level of creation kind of persists?
Yeah, I mean, we really designed the app from the ground up to be focused on the creation side. And this was really our core hypothesis going into it. Like, there's so many ways existing social media networks are really amazing and people get so much joy out of them. And that can come from the consumption side. At the same time, I do think probably the worst harms and the worst case scenarios come from the doom scrolling. And we really wanted to figure out how do we kind of avoid this very dystopian future of just a slop feed that's kind of optimized exactly to what you want to watch. It's very detached from your friends. It feels very lonely and isolating. And we kind of tackled this across the board. So really, I think the single most important thing we did there was really with Cameo. Cameo is really what makes a gen feel personal to you and makes it feel very human in a way that just kind of text to video or just all these very simple ways of prompting these models maybe doesn't. And then we also did a lot of work, Thomas specifically, on the recommender side, right? So really the way that these things really go off the rails if you're not careful or being kind of a good faith actor is if you design this rexis in a way which is sort of maximally clickbaity / engaging and kind of incentivizes the student scrolling behavior. And Thomas did a lot of very pioneering work to really rethink what a modern rexis stack looks like in this product to orient it towards creativity over consumption.
Yeah, and some of that is actually it's kind of self-fulfilling in a way or at a circle, but the fact that you can participate in the network means that you can also encourage, that's now an optimization objective that can be in there. And I think it's a very healthy one. If you're actually making a decision to, I'm going to remix this generation, that's a very active behavior. It puts you in a very creative mode. It's not that whole just consumption-oriented thing. And so that was the idea behind the Rexis is because it's so easy to create, we can actually encourage people to create in a way that you don't normally optimize for because, having worked at Instagram, the idea that you saw this photo or this video and then you opened your camera and then you took a photo and you have to attribute it back to the original photo you saw, it's impossible. It's very close to impossible. You can get a little bit of signal out of that. But in this world, you can get signal out of everything. So I think it's a very nuanced but kind of interesting sort of behavior that you can see.
Yeah, and on Ben Thompson, I think his arc. I was crushed when he first. I listen to Stratechery every morning, and so I was crushed when he gave his first round of feedback. But his arc makes sense, right? He is a consumer. Cold start network is a very hard problem. So the feed wasn't super dialed in. He's an early adopter too. So early adopter without a feed that has had any time to bake, it wasn't that interesting. So as a pure consumer and not a creator, I think he jumped in there. I think he had a quote about it just being a Sam Altman advertisement or something, which the feed did feel like that for a little bit, to be fair. I thought it was funny, but then I think when he had his kind of he brought it back to his mea culpa, he had a good point, which is even if you change the ratio of creator to consumer by 1%, that is a massive impact on the world, right? And that's such a different product. And I think that was a good summary of why we think Sora is special and what he might have missed the first time around because he is particularly a pure consumer and not a creator in his everyday life. Yeah.
I do think it's also, we play with this in some of our early prototypes off Sora, but the idea that there's a human creating it versus there's a bot creating it is a very, very foundational difference. It's kind of hard to appreciate, but if you took the Sora feed today, maybe excluding cameos, and you just stripped the person that posted it, it would be very uninteresting in my opinion. Part of the essential thing is that somebody has looked at this and decided this is they're putting their stamp of approval on it. They're also involved in the creative process. And I think that it's easy to think about. I've seen a few of these social networks that are completely AI driven, but they last for 5 minutes of interest. I get a like from a bot and I'm what does that like me? I don't really understand. Whereas if Ron likes my content, I'm oh yeah,
that's a rare,
I know what that means. Hey, you saw my thing. Did you like it?
Right. I just think almost it's so visceral about the fact that a human created it because they're in it, right?
That's also true.
Some of the other tools. One thing that's also been really interesting to see as Sora's been out is just I feel celebrities and rights holders are going through like a very fast evolution of understanding this technology and like how to use it. Can you talk a little bit about like what that journey's been like over the past month and, you know, where most folks are today?
Yeah, I mean, we've chatted with kind of every facet of society since launching this. And, you know, I think if you rewind the clock like a month ago, you know, most people in the world really did not know video gen was a thing. Certainly they didn't know
you knew it was going to be number one, but I guess
well, higher bars. And Sora, I was very confident. If you go through my gen history. Over time, you know, we've really like just had the opportunity to sit down with these people and hear out both where they're really excited about this platform. Right? I mean, there's a huge value proposition here, especially for rights holders. We launched character cameos yesterday, right? Yeah. You can imagine if you have some IP that people love, and any kid now can generate a gen with them in that character. I mean, that's going to be huge for these rights holders. And we're also hearing them out on their concerns, right? Like making sure that they have a lot of input on how their characters show up. They want restrictions. They don't want it to just kind of be a free-for-all.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty clever UI for setting the basic guardrails around that. I'm sure the real celebrities have more sophisticated. For me, I felt good.
Yeah, most people go through this cameo restrictions flow, and if there's like a celebrity who's particularly anxious about getting on the platform, we really step them through exactly like how they should think about setting these things. But when we kind of walk people through, you know, what we have on the docket and the features we've already integrated with character cameos, cameo restrictions, etc., there's honestly a lot of excitement around this. And, you know, just earlier today, we announced that we're starting to bring monetization to Sora. We imagine in the future,
this is very nice of you, by the way, to announce that, 30 minutes before you come on.
You know, you got the exclusive.
This is huge.
We wanted
you were like
to
holding it for days. For
this exact
right
moment,
before this episode.
This exact moment. We are going to start piloting new ways for rights holders to monetize their content. And we're going to really prioritize folks who have invested in the platform from the beginning, have gotten on now, and we think amazing things are going to happen from that.
Have there been any specific like celebrities or rights holders that you're like, oh, they already get it?
I mean, Mark Cuban immediately added costplusdrugs.com to his cameo instructions. And you feel like he, was first to figure out what could be like an amazing industry in of itself in terms of how you think about, brand advertisement and stuff like that. I mean, there's been a lot of people, like we have a moderation filter that prevents you from creating a public figure. Yeah. So when you go through the cameo flow, a lot of public figures actually get blocked because we don't want, we're very sensitive to impersonation, that kind of stuff. So I think it's funny because we get a lot of inbound because they're like, we can't use your product. But the amount of inbound we got has been amazing. So like tons of people are actually trying this out, using it, having an amazing time. Shaq, incredibly creative. Like we talked to his team, and they're just like, Shaq's just having a blast. Just use it, just like generating. Like I don't even know if Shaq cares about like the name he's making for himself on this new network. I think he is just genuinely having a creative, fun time.
Shaq is posting bangers, by the way.
Everyone go follow Shaq. Up on my feed like many times.
Go follow Shaq.
You just got to open it up though.
Yeah.
You've had both Google and Meta release, similar kind of products around the same time. Everyone's kind of racing forward on these video models. I wonder like what you make of those releases and kind of how you think this space evolves over time. Clearly, there's a few folks with very good video models today.
I think the future is very bright for all these models. Like I think there's no world. I think Sora will stay on top because of Bill's fine work. But this is obviously a new medium and it's a new creative expression. I think the industry will evolve completely, and this is going to be a big part of that use case. I think Meta, Google, et cetera, are right to be like, I'm sure there's a code red, or somebody joked yesterday there'd be a code purple, or they have to invent a new color for this one. And so like, I think that's actually correct because they're seeing something emerge here that has been created with this a magical technology. That said, I haven't been overly impressed with like some of the productization of the work so far. And I really think that goes back to our idea of like people embracing people. People are very creative. It's a social network. So social networks are about people and relationships. And the thing that really enabled us to move forward is this idea of Cameo and bringing this like creative aspect to your life with your friends. And I think that was kind of missed. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised post on like a model level, but I'm not totally surprised because it was actually a very, again, nonlinear, snaky journey to get to this point. It wasn't like, I think there were ideas of doing Cameo, but there was also other ideas where like, what does remix mean in this context? Like, what does it we had one that was always weird. I don't think nobody else likes this one, but I always liked it, which was like you take a video of yourself reacting to the AI video, kind of in the corner. So there was a reaction.
We should bring that one back.
I even generated like a dog reacting to myself or something. Yeah. It was cool. But like we were trying things. We tried a lot of different stuff. Even like the UI. It was early on. Joey had this idea for image gen where it was just a simple UI where you had your contact list, and it was like you just like pick and choose people to be in the gen. I was like, well, that kind of makes sense, but it's not obvious. Of course, it's obvious in retrospect. It's like, that's why it's code purple. But like, it's not obvious when you go through this whole thing. And there's a lot of micro decisions along the way that can make or break your product. With Instagram, I remember talking to Mikey, one of the founders there, and it was like the square photos was like a limitation that they just imposed. I think they're probably because they didn't want to deal with like aspect ratio nonsense. And that was actually essential for its success. So long story short, I think the space is going to get very, very competitive, very, very fast. I'm reasonably confident we're going to stay on top. I hope so. And I do think you need to embrace people in this whole process. And I think empower them with creative tooling. And that's what we're doing.
And it seems like on the product side, you're continuing to lean into this. I think you guys have talked about like kind of focusing on communities and like other kind of ways in the product. Talk a little bit about like how you kind of see yourselves leaning into this even further over time.
Yeah, this is cold start social network, impossible. Hardest problem ever.
Fun one to work on.
Yeah, it's fun for sure, especially with, and by the way, it's a completely new medium. You're like, okay, let me think about this. So we didn't really know exactly how things would evolve. And we gave it a very familiar form factor. You know, it looks very similar to other full screen media player apps. It definitely has a different feel. But we did have this hypothesis, and I think it's kind of proving correct, that this is much more fun with your friends. And that aspect definitely is in the product. It's emphasized in the recommender system, but I don't know if it's completely emphasized in all the ways that it could be. So I see us leading into that a lot more over time. I think the public feed is also incredibly important. And it's kind of a way of even giving you inspiration to be like, oh, actually, well, Shaq's here. It'd be pretty cool to be with Shaq, or like have a riff on Shaq's, Marilyn Monroe meme or whatever he's doing today. So I think that there's some product work to be thought through. And I'm also just excited about when you think about like, okay, what does this technology enable that is more fun with your friends? There's probably things that we haven't thought of yet that we can actually lean into. I can't say exactly what they are. Certainly we're more emphasizing the DMs feature over time because we think that's can be a very magical moment. But you can imagine things that happen in small groups kind of like being very exciting. Even large groups, I think, could be a very exciting angle. Certainly our OpenAI group before we launched was very cool. It's a very dense, connected, large network that people are just having a lot of fun with. And I'd like to be able to support that in the product in the future as well.
That's interesting. I mean, one thing I'm struck by is just it clearly like the way you put the feed algorithm like basically determines a lot of this behavior in the ecosystem, right? And like what you encourage there.
There's a famous quote, I'm trying to remember who did it, but it's like, show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome. And so there's never been more true than in those large recommender systems. And certainly when I worked on Instagram, there was a very explicit decision to prioritize your friends. We chose a lot of things to not introduce unconnected content in the main feed. I worked on the Explore feed, which is a secondary surface, but they made that a very explicit decision. And it's kind of drifted over time for the reason that people are posting less and all that sort of stuff. But if you look at your Instagram feed, it's kind of wacky, I'd say right now. It's pretty disconcerting. Same with X. And I think because we brought this barrier to creation down so much, there's a good chance that we can actually emphasize that. It's very funny that AI videos are what bringing you more connected to your friends. It's a little bit unusual. But the hottest densely connected network is an AI gen feed.
It's wild.
But I'm all here for it.
I think it's very like in some ways a very like heartening use case for AI, right? I think one thing I was struck by is just like it's just fun in a way that like I feel like so many of the things that have been built on top of other OpenAI products are just very serious of like, it's like every founder out of college wants to go build like a very specific vertical like enterprise app. And it's like there actually really haven't been that many consumer products that have been built. I think a lot of people were playing around with this like, how do you, have AI generations and people in the same, I feel like character AI was even riffing on some of this stuff in the early days. And I feel like you guys have kind of nailed the first product around it. And it's just cool. I mean, I don't know. It's like cool for the world to see.
I mean, it wasn't like there's a whole crazy flow you have to go through to get your cameo, right? Of like an audio challenge and moving your head around. There were many moments where Thomas and I were like, we're cooked. There's no way people are getting through this
You're
flow.
talking about funny launch stories.
Yeah.
Because we were trying to dial in the cameos and we're like, I don't know, there's a bit of voodoo involved in that whole thing.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
A lot of voodoo.
if you stand in this particular pole, the time of the day is 4 p.m.
Literally.
We all went to this pole, we recorded cameos ourselves, and somehow we ended up at a flow, which actually is the optimal flow, but is impossible to do, where you have to say the words while you move your head. And that was actually the opposite.
Yeah, it was like, say a sentence, move your head around like this. It's like
quick brown fox. It was insane. But I mean, it would actually produce slightly better cameos. Anyway, that was a funny launch moment. We had to dial that back. Be like, I don't think anyone's going to get through that one because we can't get through it.
Yeah.
Is this a secret pro tip that my cameos would be better if I had
if you
recorded
do
that
like
way?
That background looks very promising, actually.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Good lighting.
Lighting.
I'll go to
How
a very
expressive
private
you are.
place and just roll my head.
Yeah, exactly.
One tension I imagine you get dragged into immediately because you're focused on creators is like there's just such a range of sophistication of folks. We were talking about this before. There's like the kind of pure consumer type of creators that just want to like be able to remix something as easily as possible. Then you have these like prosumer type use cases where they're like, super sophisticated. And you guys have obviously introduced some like basic editing functionality. How do you like think about this product surface area over time?
I think one thing that's cool about this product is that at its best, it's very democratizing in terms of who can create and who can kind of level up their game to become a traditionally pro creator, right? If you see kind of any of these god tier gens from like, people who have really mastered Sora, you can just remix it and have basically direct access, right, to all of the ingredients that went into that. And you can sort of like learn the ropes gradually, right, about how you actually kind of master like prompting Sora, how you master like designing your cameo, etc. I think an important part of this is continuing to let people who are at the frontier of creativity, these pro consumers, continue to be empowered with like even better tools, right? So they can keep pushing forward. And we are launching more features that are really aimed towards that group specifically. Storyboard was a big one.
Yeah.
We're starting to introduce very basic kind of like editing features into the app, like stitching, which went out earlier this week. And so over time, my hope is everyone kind of levels up, right? We're going to really empower the top creators to do their thing, but just by virtue of seeing this stuff in the feed, right, and having all these amazing remixing and editing tools, everyone can kind of like gradually like turn into these people, and it will really just like make the feed an amazing place to be.
There's something beautiful about an end state where more people can be creative, and then also that can be a gateway drug for even going deeper. I think I had this experience growing up with like GarageBand.
Yeah.
I think it's like a good analogy here where it was so accessible. It was crazy. Like, in the simplest, you could just drag loops, right? You're not even really sitting down and playing an instrument, but you're starting to get a sense of like, all right, what are the elements of creating? And you can actually create some interesting things, but then you can go deeper and you're like, oh, now I'm actually curious enough to have the MIDI keyboard and like learn guitar and record, and like it's a gateway drug, but we got there by making the barrier to entry much lower.
But I'm curious, I feel like every app builder right now is kind of thinking about like, what do I build as scaffolding around these models versus like, I just go to a beach for 2 years and like the models are going to get way better.
Yeah.
How do you guys think about that as like a holistic team of like the types of scaffolding you want to build around the shortcomings in the model versus ways it'll just get better and,
Yeah. In general, I think a lot of OpenAI's magic comes from just having this incredibly ambitious AGI-aligned research roadmap and sticking to it no matter what happens, no matter what the competitors release, no matter what the product pressure is. And that's certainly our philosophy on Sora. I think what's cool is as these models get more and more powerful, we kind of discover all of these amazing capabilities that they have, and that keeps like Rohan and Thomas very busy. So something like Cameo, something like remixing, right, is really not just a feature that we pioneer on research, but it's really a joint collaboration with the work the amazing guys on product are doing to figure out all of the crazy things you can do with these models.
I do think it requires a very creative lens on what you do with it, or a willingness to fail. Like let's try the AI, completely AI feed with no cameos. That's actually not that cool. But I can imagine a lot of things in gaming and other surfaces that even today's LLMs and video models could support in a very interesting way. And so I think it's just a little bit of thinking outside the box and not trying to mirror the exact roadmap of OpenAI in any way, but being like, okay, like what's a spin on this that actually makes sense? I'm always consumer build, not talking about enterprise use cases, of which there are 1,000 for these models, of course. But like the consumer things is just like, what's creative, what's new? Let's embrace that. There's way more you can do with this. There's control. There's all kinds of exciting things. Yeah.
This is a big part of the reason we started launching a Sora API as well with this generation of models. There is so much stuff as Thomas is alluding to, that you can build with these things. And we're a very small team on Sora.
Right. Shockingly small.
Yeah, shockingly.
Yeah. You were under 20 when you released it, and now we're like 50 or so?
We're at so there's roughly 9 or 10 researchers on Sora. I think product is at what?
Under
20-ish.
20.
Yeah. And then we have a systems team, which is about 13 or so folks. So it's 40-ish in total. It's pretty small.
Wow.
And so, all of these creators who reach out, or all of these very entrepreneurial folks who want to build these new applications, they now have the ability to do that with the Sora API.
Have you seen anything cool already on the Sora API, or what gets you guys excited about what people can do?
Mattel has done some cool stuff. So they've been prototyping.
It's like Barbie Mattel?
Yeah, they've been prototyping new toys with Sora, which is just super cool to see. This is, I think, over time, the applications will just get increasingly sophisticated. It's been, I think, 3 weeks since we launched the API, but yeah, already people are doing some pretty wacky stuff.
I've seen some CAD to visualization pipelines where people are taking a CAD file, translating that to some caption that Sora could understand so they could visualize their parts, which I'm that doesn't seem very precise. And they're explained why this is actually critical and something missing in their file. I'm whoa, that's amazing.
Maybe taking a step back and talking about the video model side, but I'd love you just kind of contextualize for our listeners, how has the AI video space progressed over the past few years? Maybe some of the different milestones that matter to you.
So I'd say for a while, basically there was no progress in video, and a lot of it was really on the image generation side. So one of the most important early papers in image generation was DALL-E 1, which came out of OpenAI several years back. That was early work that Aditya did. And that was really the first time we kind of saw this breakthrough general purpose capability that we were starting to see in the LMs come to the visual generation side. Before that point, there were models that were very niche in terms of modeling very specific narrow distributions like human faces. But there was really not a moment where it was clear these things could model kind of all of the pixels that exist on the internet. I think from that point on, it became clear where things were headed. It took a few years to really get image generation under full control. So, DALL-E 2, DALL-E 3. We started working on Sora in early 2023. It was co-developed at the time that DALL-E 3 was being worked on. And we kind of had all of the necessary ingredients to make a big breakthrough at that point in time. We started to understand how scaling works. Diffusion models were starting to become much more principled, both in terms of the actual formulation of diffusion as well as the architecture of them. And Sora 1 was really the GPT-1 moment for video. That was the first time you could even think about doing kind of high-res, consistent generation for anything more than 1 second. We could do 60 seconds barely with that model. And since then, we've really just been trying to push the frontier of intelligence and usability. So for a long time, we were actually trying to figure out what number of GPT is Sora 2.
Yeah.
I think it's very clear now it's GPT 3.5 in many ways, both in terms of the breakthrough in capabilities. This is the only model that can, do an Olympics gymnastic routine and not have things just go crazy.
Right. I love that that's one of the evals.
Yeah. Olympic. It's funny when we released Sora 1, everyone just went off on Twitter with all these Olympics prompts. You saw limbs flying everywhere. Yeah, we got roasted. So clearly, it's justified by the model intelligence boost, but also in terms of the usability side, right? GPT 3.5 ushered in ChatGPT. That was the first time that these models became really valuable, just a huge swath of society, and that's what we're seeing with Sora as well.
Yeah, I guess did that jump from GPT-1 to 3.5 surprise you? Or did it feel, was it if people in the know were if we keep scaling the way we're scaling, this is going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, we knew we were onto something, when you again see just this rapid improvement in how the model understands physics, right? It's very visceral to see, these gymnastics routines start working, or for, when a glass gets dropped, it actually shatters, right? You're onto something. We just see the videos, right? Seeing really is believing. So we knew it was not going to be as slow of a ramp as it was for the LMs. I mean, it's funny to call that slow, but we're really accelerating timelines here. So we knew that it would eclipse the pace of progress in LMs. We weren't sure by how much. And so I think we weren't sure will we end up 3.5. We ended up kind of being on the upper end of expectations.
Yeah. And what in your mind is the jump from 3.5 to 4? What are the kind of unsolved problems or things that that you think need to get better in these models?
I think the next breakthrough capability in video is really going to be simulation of processes that need to last for hours or even longer on end. So we're really excited about how Sora will eventually be used for knowledge work or even for biology, physics research, et cetera. And if you think about what it takes to simulate a wet lab, right, we really need a lot of improvements on the modeling side. You need to be able to run these models for days, weeks, years on end. And that requires solving a lot of very fundamental problems with generative modeling.
I feel like this is one of the big questions. I mean, maybe just take robotics as an example. I feel like there's this big question of like how much simulation data alone gets you. And like, I think for a while, it felt like maybe it could get you a bunch around locomotion, but not like manipulation or some of the more sophisticated tasks. The video models have gotten a lot better since some of that early thinking. What's your latest, bet on, how far just using these video models gets us in some of these domains where it felt like we'd have to build up massive real world data collection operations?
I think they're going to be instrumental for making progress here, right? And to your point, one of the really core issues with robotics, right, is it's just hard to get a large data set of trajectories, which is useful for pre-training. And video models clearly, right, like deeply understand things like locomotion, like dexterity related tasks. And so we're very bullish on the ability to repurpose models like Sora for these things. I think I'm very bitter lesson pilled, as many people are at OpenAI, and I really believe that some of the older kind of lines of research, which were built on very early video models but didn't necessarily bear fruit, will start to be successful just with these increases in base model intelligence.
Are you going to basically need one of these like state-of-the-art video models to even do work in like bio, robotics, material sciences?
I think it will increasingly be the case, yeah.
So I guess like these next frontiers, it seems like for you are really around like longer running videos and the ability to kind of keep like true to physics in the world.
Yeah, it's really in pursuit of this world simulation goal, right? Like how do we make it so Sora is not just kind of like a video generation system, but really deeply understands, every bit of reality and is useful for tasks that go well beyond just kind of entertainment. I think entertainment is an awesome thing that people get tons of utility out of with these models, as we're seeing with the Sora app right now. But I really think this is just phase one for video. And this is kind of the simplest thing we can build right now with the current capability of models. And their usefulness will just skyrocket over the coming years.
Yeah. Is there an eval that you have in mind that you're like, God, when video models can do this, like that'll be...
Maybe GDP val eventually,
Yeah.
It's a good question. I think the first scientific breakthrough that comes as a result of simulating some phenomenon in video models would be an insane milestone, right? I mean, that will just really open the floodgates. And we've been debating on the team, like, what will that thing be? High error bars, of course. I think something related to classical physics is very likely. Video is just a good modality for understanding, physical phenomenon that are well represented with like observational data, right? Things like turbulence, et cetera. So I think that will be an insane moment. I guess it's not necessarily an eval, but certainly like a milestone that will really mark kind of like the beginning of a new era.
Yeah, and because I'm a shameless podcaster, I have to ask you, you have any prediction on when that might be?
Oh man, I'm really bullish on timelines. I would be shocked if we are not making breakthroughs like this by early 2028.
Yeah. And is it like, is similar to the LLM world where it feels like we have some scaling laws that we just need to follow, or are there like other, I guess on the mix in the LLM world of like data, algorithmic breakthroughs and just more GPUs, like is it a similar way to think about things in the video world, or how should people adjust their mental models?
I mean, I think there's lots of axes along which you can make progress. Certainly scaling is a big one. I think when you begin to think about how do we do these kinds of like years long simulation rollouts, that maybe requires some new breakthroughs, and you cannot just kind of port the existing techniques directly over that. Maybe you can, and maybe it'll be successful. But when we really, get to the point where we need to build this alternate reality, it remembers, every, character on your piece of paper right there, kind of the details of the fabric of your jacket. That seems like it might need something kind of new. So lots of green pastures to explore.
How do you do evals on video models now? Like what how do you know when they're getting better, and
how do you guys do it on the product side?
Do you have any like go-to things
vibes,
you try?
Some vibes, but we actually, this is an area where we've matured a lot, I think, especially from Sora 1 to Sora 2, just learning how high leverage good evals are, and then actually having a product now with real use cases, and before we launched, having conviction in the use cases lets us build, like basic product evals, right? Like, hey, we're changing the model or some part of the stack in XYZ. Let's run, the top Sora 1 prompts through Sora 2 and get a sense of, the diff. And now that we actually have like production use cases, just like Cameo is a great one. Like anytime we make a change, we want to understand how does it impact like one of these core use cases.
Yeah. I'm curious with video models, whether obviously you could imagine if you averaged out the preferences of everyone, you may end up with like a personality list model that like is perfect to no one. And totally. I wonder over time, do you think there end up being like a bunch of different models with different aesthetics and different like use cases, or does it kind of converge on a single model that you can kind of steer to your like way of liking things?
So I think there's actually an analogy here to recommender systems that fits pretty nicely, which is like when people think of recommender systems, not everyone necessarily thinks through their feed very often, but like, let's just say I just tasked you with like designing a feed. Your first thing you might think of is just like, oh, let me sort by popularity or like sort by something like that. And actually you find that is exactly the following, this regression to the mean kind of thing, where it's actually interesting to nobody because it's just a trend that is only globally popular, which is not suiting your own personal preference. And so what the magic is, you introduce personalization in different forms, and that can be, there's lots of different ways of doing this, but the obvious one is just look at your history and see what you're going to do next. And that really does change the feeling and the results of relevance, all that sort of stuff in your feed. I can't imagine that we wouldn't have a similar phenomenon basically everywhere. I mean, we're seeing a lot in ChatGPT around personalization being a very important thing, the way the model talks to you. I wouldn't necessarily, I mean, I'm not going to speak to video models directly, but in recommender systems, you learn very quickly that you don't want bespoke models for everybody.
Right.
It's an infrastructural nightmare. It's also like not really in the pursuit of AGI in many ways. You can kind of do it, but it doesn't really scale. It also gets very hard to reason about. And much better is to leverage the wisdom of the crowds, where you find analogies between people, you do collaborative filtering. And so it helps, actually the scale benefits you in this beautiful way where it's like, I know that this person has liked videos that are similar in the past, and I'm similar to that person. And so now, therefore, I'm going to like very likely enjoy this video as well, or be inspired to be creative from this video.
Yeah. I mean, I think models that perceive the world the way humans do, like if you measure intelligence in that way, diversity and understanding different stylistic behavior baked into the base model is an important part of that intelligence. And that was the craziest thing about Sora 2 to me, not the craziest thing, but one of the most amazing things. There's definitely mode collapse in I think almost all the other video models out there today, even the ones that are great at like cinematic content and physics. Sora feels like it's great at that and great at like a Ring, doorbell footage. I'm geeked. It's great at like an interview, like a podcast. It's great at all these different kind of things that feel very anime, very stylistically and different on sort of like, just like, I don't know, the range of the model is amazing. And I only anticipate that we lean into that.
Yeah. I mean, you guys have obviously spoiled people on the LM side, where it's just like the default expectation is whatever you release is like 100 times cheaper in 6-12 months. Like, should we expect a similar thing on the video side?
100%. And even if you rewind the clock to February 2024, when we showed off Sora 1 to the world for the first time, that model cost him like $50 and compute to sample like a 720p, short video from. And if you look at like our API pricing for Sora 2, right, it's like cents on the dollar compared to that. So already we're seeing orders of magnitude decreases in cost with vastly higher model intelligence with this release. And that trend will definitely continue.
You wanted to break big news on this podcast. So 30 minutes before we started, you tweeted that you were going to introduce some pricing, which I guess entirely reasonable. I think when you get 30 a day and then you have to start paying a little bit for them. And I don't think the internet rioted from what at least I saw. That seems like a natural first step in monetizing. I know you guys have talked before about like both monetization for the inference costs of running these models, but also monetization to figure out how to incentivize rights holders and all sorts of folks to get involved.
Yeah. I mean, we really want to create an ecosystem where everyone is benefiting, right? Like we need to pay the GPU bills for Sora. We want, even new creators who are coming up on this platform, right? They didn't necessarily have a following on TikTok or IG. We want them to have a path to success in making money. And then we want the rights holders who have, this incredible library of characters who so many people will just love using to also benefit. So when we were thinking about the initial ways to monetize, we're going into this learning a lot every day. We want to kind of take it slow, and we want to make sure we're checking the boxes on the most important categories here, which is giving a path to monetization to all of these different people within our ecosystem. And we really viewed credits as being kind of the primary way to do that, without necessarily overcommitting to a model that we don't know we can support long term, or just like need to pull the plug on eventually. So we don't think this will necessarily be the final way that we ultimately monetize Sora. We're really open-minded in this. We're trying to be as transparent as possible when we kind of like make these decisions and just hear what everybody across the board has to say about it, because we want to land this in a spot, right, where, certainly not OpenAI is like the only player like making money off of this, but everybody is benefiting. I think that's really important to the success of the platform long term, right? Like this should be somebody's full-time job. If they're a creator and they want to go viral in Sora, we should have a way to really make that possible for them.
Any other like types of pricing models you guys have riffed around or thought about?
Nothing that's like super tangible in the short term. But again, going back to, how you can just totally rethink like branding and the ways you might want to bring something that you sponsor to the table now that you have generative video. Like, right now, if you're scrolling an Instagram feed, you get a new video for an advertisement. But, what if you're a creator and you're okay with all the inanimate objects in your video being certain brands or something like that, and you can auction off to certain brands? Like, there's like some wacky ideas out there that I feel like are, we're like.
I think other thing that is really interesting about this platform and different, and I'm sure it'll grow over time. Like, I'm using myself as an example. Like, I made my Cameo public as one of the first early adopters that did, because we were on the team. And I don't know, I think I have like 17,000 Cameo appearances now. Yeah. And like, if I sum the view count over those Cameo appearances,
probably insane.
I probably have never had more distribution in my entire life.
Yeah,
it's like 100%. And I mean, I'm a nobody. Like, that's
my follower count is like creeping up to my one on Twitter. It's quite crazy, actually.
That is crazy. But and then you multiply that by the Cameo count and the people viewing that. Like, actually, there's a crazy amount of reach for that one individual that you don't. It's like kind of an impossible level of reach on other platforms, because they have to, or you have to create it yourself necessarily. But I actually like I like seeing what I do every day. I change my Cameo instructions. I'm like, oh, I've got a cool shirt on now. Musical. And I was like, what all the musical numbers are? And that's just me looking at my own game. Like, I'm also seeing what other people are doing. So I think it's a very interesting thing. I don't think we have a great analogy for this type of format. There's a lot of new medium things, but it's just interesting to think that reach in a different way. It's not just what you post necessarily.
And one thing I think that's cool about the product too is that it's like global, and I wonder if like you've seen any cool like different variations and ways people use it like across geographies.
So we just did the launch to some Southeast Asian countries yesterday night.
Literally last night.
Hot off the press.
It was hot off the press, so that's out there. We originally launched to US, Canada, and then opened it up to Korea and Japan. And there's definitely a huge different flavor of all kinds of creation, comfortableness with cameos, comfortable with character cameos. It's been inspiring to see. Sometimes people complain about the cross-cultural content. I love it. It's really, everything just has a different flavor. The Japanese creators that we all love and follow, remember
Kaigo Matsumara.
There we go.
Kaigo is insane.
Just like it's like very aesthetic. It has a very different feel and than anything I've seen from the US. So I'm sure there's going to be more to come there as well. And I like it when I can learn something from the gens as well. And one thing I saw was somebody talking the Toronto accent, and I'm from north of Toronto. I didn't know there was a Toronto accent. As soon as I saw that, I was like, that is exactly how everybody talks. And I immediately opened Wikipedia, and there's a huge article on the Toronto and the dialect or whatever they call it. And I was like, I've just learned something. That's very interesting. Which actually was my experience with TikTok too. Like, I'm actually a big TikTok user and fan. And I so many things I've learned from that, where somebody is like, psychological things about myself, or they're describing some behavior, some attachment theory thing. I'm like, wait a minute, that's me. Like, let me go look that up on Wikipedia. So I think we'll see a lot more of that, and I think cross-cultural type of stuff is also there. Also, when you see a remix chain, it's so fun to see all the different countries that are participating in that. Always a different flavor.
Totally.
The rap is a different, notion. Like slightly
Bollywood
different.
Rap,
I need a translate button, but it's like it's so close.
The latest feed, I love. It's like my favorite spotlight into what people are doing on the app. It's just like literally the stream of what's happening. One of the most, to riff off of what Tom's talking about in terms of like learning things, just learning what people want to, what scenes they want to see themselves in and their friends in. Like it's like just so interesting, the kind of things people are memeing about, and like, I don't know, like it's mundane to one person, but then if you're in that mode of like, what do people care and laugh about? There's so many hilarious things people obsessed with. I was talking to a user today that's obsessed with cranes. She was like, I just love visualizing myself on top of cranes.
Makes sense to me.
I mean, obviously you guys, I think, have been super thoughtful on the moderation side too. And I don't know whether like, I think both encouraging like a lot of fun content, but also I think have done a pretty good job of like navigating those waters. Like, was that an iterative process, or did you just like nail it from step one? Like, talk a bit about that.
Oh my God. We've long sleepless nights getting to the point where we are now, and still a lot of work. Shout out to amazing both people working on safety on the Sora team, and like a ton of work has happened at OpenAI on our moderation systems, moderation models. We have reasoning models that we've written about that are in our safety stacks, which are amazing. And so it's a great example of using our technology to make our products better. And like we were talking about before, we are able to do a lot more with a smaller team now on this like moderation and safety front. But thank you for saying it's in a good place. That's not what people on Twitter tell us, but
Twitter angry about something I can't imagine.
There's, the content moderation failures are understandably frustrating because, we're trying to toe this line between user freedom but blocking all the bad stuff, and we're getting better every day. We're in new territory, especially with cameos. We want to be really sensitive to you feeling like you're in control and you're comfortable on this network, right? So with that comes a lot of thought in the guardrails.
Yeah. You've kind of talked about this being a new social platform. I think, Sam's spoken very publicly about like that being interesting surface area for OpenAI to explore. You talked about maybe this integrating with ChatGPT over time in some way. Like, how do you see other like angles of things that are being worked on in OpenAI, like one day, coalescing with us?
I mean, Bill mentioned, going beyond entertainment. You can like ChatGPT is like sort of your super assistant. That's literally what we called it early days. Why shouldn't it be able to respond with a really helpful video? I think that'll be really killer once we get that kind of stuff in. But yeah, it's like I think the world's our oyster with ways that like all of our products could interact. I mean, we just released a browser. I don't know. You can imagine using a browser and having a little video assistant or something talking to you on the side. Your agent, help me book this flight. I don't know. There's crazy, wacky ideas I've heard out there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this stuff builds off each other. Like, let's say the reasoning models, which in the pursuit of AGI, which very justified, is my first use case wouldn't be a moderation stack.
Right.
I was like, wait a second, that actually is a perfect use case. And so a lot of this stuff builds on each other. The ecosystem itself, I do think like ChatGPT does feel a little different, a little bit sacred.
Totally.
Doesn't mean it can't change over time, or like there's definitely things that we can do there. But it tends to be a more utility-driven use case, and mixing entertainment and a utility-driven use case doesn't always work. So I don't think it's just like jam it in there and it will just magically work.
Right.
I think we want to do that very thoughtfully. But certainly as a utility use case, these models are going to discover new modes of turbulence modeling. So there's clearly utility. Yeah. I heard 2028.
Early 2028. I think it was. Not even by the second.
And so you should be able to ask ChatGPT about that. And video as a modality is, you see it on YouTube. Like half the videos on YouTube are like how-to videos. That's something that we would want to see modeled. But in my case, here's my toilet, figure out how I like adjust it and fix this problem with it, or whatever it is. So I think that can be very naturally connected.
Yeah. Before we move to our quickfire round, Bill, I did want to ask you, a shameless question, which is maybe what's the simplest way to explain how these models learn physics?
It's a great question. At a high level, right, these models are always doing prediction tasks. So in the case of, for example, diffusion models, you're getting a video, which we've artificially added a lot of noise to. And the goal of the neural network is to predict the underlying signal that we kind of obscured with all of that noise. LMs also have prediction tasks, right? You're predicting the next token conditioned on all the prior tokens. We think actually both LMs and Sora learn world models. They learn different flavors of world models. But fundamentally, right, if you're doing this prediction task, whether it's predicting signal or whether it's predicting the next token, you need to develop some understanding of kind of the dynamics of the world, right? So in the case of LMs, if I'm generating like a rhyme or something, or maybe a poem, then it's very useful for me to have some kind of internal knowledge, right, about the structure of poems, about the linguistic elements of them that I just pick up from data, right? Because if I haven't grokked these things, then it's very hard for me to predict the next token. And the analogy holds for video as well, right? So if I'm a video model and the prompt is a guy playing basketball, I sure better have learned, right, how basketballs dribble, how light refracts through a scene, and all of these just little components of physics in order to paint this broader picture of like the entire scene. And so it's basically an emergent property from lots of compute and lots of data, which is like a very, banal thing to say these days. Everyone gets it. Better lesson works. But fundamentally, right, if you don't have these kind of internal models of how the world functions, then you will always be a worse model and thus have a higher loss than one that does. And so that is kind of how we think about the optimization pressure which makes physics emergent from large-scale video pre-training.
In the LLM world, there's, we went from just like the entire internet to now like there's, incredibly valuable data that is like PhDs, doing different things. Is there like an equivalent in the video world of like, oh, that is like a really complex, piece of physics that like is great for the model to see, or like?
Right. I mean, if you take any like video researcher and show them a bunch of videos and ask them which is their favorite, chances are, if there's a gymnastics routine going on, they're gonna be like, that's the one.
All gymnastics.
That's the one. But I think it's a really interesting question. And it's somewhat hard to answer because the way intelligence manifests in videos, I feel, is very different than the way it manifests in language. You could, for example, imagine there is a lecture video, right, where someone is giving a course on calculus, and that clearly has an intelligence which is of the flavor of text, right, where it's teaching you about some like deep concept about the world, mathematics, physics, what have you. On the other hand, though, when you think about these gymnastics routines, right, there's no intellectual intelligence there beyond kind of the planning involved of doing like a gymnastics routine. But there is so much interesting detail about the small collisions that happen as part of that routine. Again, about all of the people in the background shuffling amongst themselves, like building a model that can actually simulate not just the gymnast, right, but every single person in the broader scene. And so, we're still trying to figure out what kind of data really makes for an amazing video model. But there's a lot to it that's very multimodal in a way, right? Multimodal in the sense of kind of all these different pockets of intelligence which exist in video, but not necessarily in other modalities like text.
Well, I always like to end our interviews with a standard quickfire round where I stuff some overly broad questions into the very end. Awesome. And so maybe to start, I'm curious for each of you, one thing you've changed your mind on in the AI world in the last year.
I think my timelines for some things have accelerated and for other things have delayed. I think like this is a common one that people say, but I just think we really estimate consumers and adoption and how people learn this technology. And we could be way ahead of like the general world in terms of the actual science, but way behind in terms of like the way we build a product interface that's accessible and how we teach the world about it. And then when you get into like actual enterprise use cases, there's like regulatory sort of things you have to sort of battle through to get people to actually adopt this technology. So all of that, working as like a product person, even on the consumer product, just seeing like the crazy amount of sort of work that happens behind the scenes to make things possible. There's just a lot to do for people to actually adopt these things.
The aspect of AI I've updated most on is, if you asked me a year ago, would I care if I watched, some blockbuster movie versus, say, some movie generated by a model that's, like Sora 3 caliber or something? I would say the Sora 3 movie would be just as good as the blockbuster one. I don't need any information about it. Like, assuming it's, grokked cinematic content and like interesting plots, like that's sufficient. Interestingly, though, I feel like the more I've interacted with these models, I actually do feel a hollowness when there's not clear creative intent behind it, which is something I would not have expected to have felt a priori, in part because, I enjoy making the model. So, it feels like weird for me to have that opinion. But I really have been struck by how much more interesting and compelling generations feel, even with Cameo, of course, right? Seeing the people in them feels amazing. Seeing your pet, Rocket, my dog, who's now, as of yesterday, available in Sora. But even knowing someone, I think Thomas was mentioning this earlier, even knowing someone just had the creative intent, right, to reject a sample, right? Or like really iterate on a prompt, and the plot that they're actually using in the underlying generation has some kind of deeper connection to them emotionally, right? You actually do kind of feel that in a way that is very surprising to me. And I'm not sure exactly what triggered this change in me. Like I would have been like very convinced by these completely AI generated feeds that are bot made or something, as long as the bot was good. But I really now like do not actually think even I would find that compelling, which is quite interesting to me. And I'm not sure exactly actually why this is the case, but there's some, there's still some like morsel of humanity, which is like very important to communicate through these gens for content to actually feel meaningful in some way. So I've really updated on that.
If you guys all, left OpenAI tomorrow and had to build things on top of the Sora API, what would you go build?
Game.
That's
like a
one.
game where you put yourself in a video game where you
Oh, no, I'm sorry I can't provide more details than that.
Thomas, are you leaving tomorrow?
Here's my very well thought out business plan.
Well,
funny you ask.
Yeah.
I think there's, I grew up in gaming. I learned to program in gaming. I can't imagine how much crazy opportunity there is in that space. And the idea that a lot of the things that are very difficult, at least for me when I was building games, was like, oh, I have to go and source art or build the art myself. And that was a labor intensive process, learn the tools to do all that sort of stuff. I don't think this is exactly what needs to manifest, but like what kind of gaming models are enabled by this generative technology in the same way that like we're talking about cameos. That's something uniquely enabled here is like what kind of things are out there. So I'm excited about that and seeing what people can come up with in that space.
Totally. My answer is like, I'll get a similar answer from a different angle, which is just that I think the most, I mean, it probably comes through in the product we've built and how we're talking today. But the most interesting thing about this technology is how it will transform and create new mediums rather than just, like an AI film. I think it's like the least interesting concept to me. Yeah, there's people doing cool things with film, but like completely new things are most interesting. And so I think interactive, which is like maybe gaming from Thomas's point of view. From my point of view, maybe it's interactive storytelling of some sort. And no one's really nailed this. Like, there's choose your own adventure books. I think those were pretty popular. Yeah. And like some movies like Bandersnatch on Netflix are kind of like, but I think pushing that idea like a lot farther of some like, collaborative piece of creative lore or something like that.
Why don't you think there have been more consumer product, like fun consumer products built on top of these models? Is it just that like they weren't good enough until now, or?
I think it's really freaking hard to build a consumer product. A good consumer product is like one of the hardest things, combined with the technology being so new, and it's unclear what actually sticks. I think that's actually still quite a hard combination of things to nail. Yeah.
I mean, you've just done it twice at the top, so I guess still difficult. What about something you'd build on top of the API?
Oh man.
I know we can't take you away from the models, but if we had to.
I would just go train new models, I don't know, something probably more on the science side or robotics facing. I think there's just a lot of cool new work to be done there.
Well, I want to leave the last word to you guys. I usually say where can folks go to learn more, but I'd be genuinely shocked if any of our listeners didn't use Sora.
Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know if there's specific research you want to point people to or like cool new product features. The mic is yours. Anywhere you want to point our listeners, please go ahead.
We just launched character cameos yesterday. So, if you use Sora, you can upload yourself and create videos with your friends. Now you can upload anything, pets, inanimate objects. You can create, your own IP from Sora and create a character out of that. I've got a pickle that's going viral, Pickleton. So go cameo Pickleton. There you go. That's my piece.
I have a wild one. Okay, just trying to think of something
it's
crazy.
an open mic, please.
Okay, open mic is in Disneyland Hong Kong. There is
Good start.
There is it's the Haunted Mansion, but it's like I think it's called Magic Mansion. I don't know. They have a slight riff on it, and there's this lamp that it's a dark ride, so you just go through it, and there's this lamp that pours. Like the whole concept is this monkey has this lamp, and when it pours out, the objects come to life, and so. It pours out, and then there'll be like an armor on the wall, and the armor will start moving and talking to you. And we actually kind of just built that, which like you just record an object, and then you say, "Come, make it alive."
Yeah.
And so I think check out that ride is very cool, but also back to character cameos. It's like actually it has that magical property.
Yeah.
I'm sold. We've temporarily made it so you don't need an invite code to get in. Come in with your friends. Sora is way more fun if you're in there with a group. And check it out. Give us feedback.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much. This is a ton of fun. I want to make sure I get you guys back to actually building Sora because the world will far more benefit from that. But seriously, this was a ton of fun.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah.
See you in Disneyland, Hong Kong.
Yeah, seriously.